The straw mic is back, so you know what that means. We are going to be here for a hot minute, spilling the tea about my summer reads, my thoughts on being back on YouTube for a whole year, and then doing a book haul at the end as well. And hopefully the mic doesn't pick up all the people moving outside because that would be very upsetting. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Alessandro, and like I said, we're going to be kind of doing amalgamation of a couple of different videos in this one because I want to talk about the very few books that I read this summer, and I also want to open up a little bit of a discussion about BookTube and my thoughts on reading in the book community after being back on YouTube for a whole year. And then we're also going to do a little bit of a book haul at the end, talking about the books I've accumulated over the past 3 months. Hopefully editing Alessandro puts timestamps for the video, and if not, I'm sorry, but they should be there. And without further ado, I think we should just hop right in. The summer, in terms of reading, has been very interesting for me because I haven't read that many books, or at least I haven't read that many books compared to what I'm used to reading during the summertime. I've been really busy this summer. I started a new job in addition to working my previous job, so I did work 2 jobs this summer, albeit one job was a lot less busy than the other. Nonetheless, I still was very busy and didn't have a ton of time to read, and also kind of went through a little bit of a reading slump. Actually, that is a gross understatement. I have went through one of the worst reading slumps I've ever been in this month. Today is Monday, August 21st is the time I'm filming this, and I haven't even finished a book in a whole month, which is a little bit unusual for me. But I do want to talk about the 3 books I did read this summer, and I read all fantasy books, 1 romantasy, 1 high fantasy, and then 1 cozy fantasy. Starting off this summer, I read a book that I did not think I was going to be reading. If you guys are OGs on my channel, you know that back in October or September of last year, I did a Court of Thorns and Roses reading experiment vlog, where I read the first book in the ACOTAR series, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and then in December of last year, I ended up picking up A Court of Mist and Fury book number 2, but I didn't really vibe with it at the time, so I decided to put it down thinking that I would not return to the series. However, the first book I finished this summer was A Court of Mist and Fury, so I don't know what happened. I was just perusing my shelves one day when I was like, what if I finished A Court of Mist and Fury? Like, what if I continue with the ACOTAR series? Because at the time, I just finished Jade Legacy and a few other books. I didn't know really what to read for the summer, and I just saw this and I was like, what if I just picked it up? And then for the week I finished A Court of Mist and Fury, it proceeded to take over my entire life. I kind of get the hype around this book, I kind of do, because I finished it in about a week, even though I technically resumed from the halfway point. A week is still pretty good for this book. I can't really say too much about A Court of Mist and Fury in this video without spoiling the events of ACOTAR Book 1, which I don't want to do. This will be completely spoiler-free. Let's just say ACOMAF follows the events after A Court of Thorns and Roses, where our main character Feyre is now kind of living her new double life, and a threat is brewing on the horizon that her new double life kind of needs help with. Does that make any sense? If you know, you know. If you read ACOMAF, you know what I'm talking about. This book is definitely more romance heavy, I would say, than the first book. I would argue there is a slow burn in this one, like a really intense slow burn. I knew very little about the A Court of Thorns and Roses series going into it when I read book 1. If you want to watch that vlog, I'll leave it somewhere linked above. And I would say my experience with ACOMAF was actually pretty good. It was really fun towards the end. Of course, Sarah J. Maas and her endings are insane. But one thing I learned about myself is I think I'm more of a fantasy reader who enjoys romance subplots within the fantasy. I would not say I'm a strict romantasy reader, and I think romantasy is like all the craze right now with Fourth Wing and Serpent and the Wings of Nights, and I just don't foresee myself reading and enjoying those types of books because while I did like ACOMAF, it was fun, it was good, I just was not invested in the romance as much. I really wanted more plot of what was going on in the background, and I just don't think that's what the books are written for. That being said, it was fun, it was a good experience. I have Ac War on my bookshelf, so maybe we'll get to that one day soon. The next book I want to talk about is an interesting one because I did talk about it in my last vlog a little bit. I didn't have a great experience with it. I thought the book was good, and if you watch my last video, you know this is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. Now, this is a historical high fantasy novel that takes place in 18th century Cairo. We follow our main character Nari, who's a con woman living on the streets, and then during one of her, let's say, fake rituals one day, she accidentally summons a very mysterious and sly Jinn warrior named Dara. Dara tells Nari that she is bound to the city called Daevabad, an ancient Jinn city far from Cairo. After kind of a daring escape from Cairo when evil spirits attack them, they are whisked away to Daevabad, where the story kind of ensues from there. This book is really interesting for me because I'm actually doing a reread of it right now, because after I finished the book that I'll talk about after City of Brass, I was kind of went into a really bad reading slump for a number of weeks, and I DNF'd 4 books in that time. I tried to read 4 different books that were not City of Brass to try to get me out of that reading slump and was not successful. So last week, I just was like, you know what? I'm interested in City of Brass still. I want to reread it, but I think before I read the second book, Kingdom of Copper, I need to get a refresher on the world and basically reread the book again. And I'm really glad I made that decision because I'm really enjoying City of Brass now. It's a much more enjoyable read now that I kind of understand the pacing. I've read it once, I get the general gist of the world and the characters and the history, and I honestly am having a really good time with it now, and I cannot wait to read Kingdom of Copper next. But yes, I read City of Brass. It took me about 3 weeks after I finished Akamath to read City of Brass. And then after City of Brass, I read probably what is going to be my favorite book for the entire year. And I cannot believe I waited so long to read this book because I absolutely fell in love with it. I fell in love with the world, the characters, the plot, all the tropes. It was great. That is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. I am nothing if not late to the party. This book came out, in 2020? And I'm just getting around to reading it now, and it's been popping on Instagram, BookTube, at Book Everything since 2020. For those of you who are living under a rock and have not read House in the Cerulean Sea, I would actually say I could universally recommend this to everybody because yes, it is technically a fantasy book, but it is more that brand of cozy fantasy that I would argue. So this, I would put this in the category of like, along with The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana, and then I know there's another one called Legends and Lattes that I would say is probably pretty similar in tone to this, because there are fantastical elements to the book, but that is not the focus. There is another plot at hand. House in the Cerulean Sea follows our main character, Linus Baker, who's kind of a government worker. He works for the department in charge of magical youth, and one day, Linus is summoned by extremely upper management to go on a special mission / case to observe the orphanage on, I believe it's called Marsyas Island. At this orphanage, there are a number of dangerous children that live there who are a little bit different than the other children he's helped in the past. And once he arrives at the orphanage, his world is kind of turned up on its head. A lot of his beliefs and values about his job and the world are questioned, and the story kind of goes from there. This book was so good. I just loved TJ Klune's writing. The characters were so good and so funny. There was a great trope of found family, which is one of my favorite tropes of all time, regardless of the genre I'm reading. I didn't give this book 5 stars, I gave it 4 stars. To me, it was 4 stars, but I still really loved it, and I think that's just, books can be your favorite and be 4 stars. I just overall really loved it, and I think, again, there was great found family, there was great queer representation, and then I think, again, TJ Klune opened up a discussion about what it means to be different in a world where society does not accept you. He really channeled this through the different characters in the book. I just really loved the way he talked about it, especially because most of the characters were kids. I think kids deal with that a lot. I know, adults deal with that too, but having it through the lens of kids was, I think, a really smart move. There were so many great discussions between Linus and the children. I loved how Linus formed relationships with each of the children. And overall, I think would leave you with a question of like, what does it mean to be different, and how do you go about your life and be your authentic self when society does not necessarily accept you? Really love that he opened the discussion this way. I thought it was really great, really well written again, and I think, again, I could universally recommend this to anybody. Okay, so those are the 3 books that I have read so far this summer. I'm probably going to finish City of Brass before the month is up, and then, like I said, move on to Kingdom of Copper. Now I want to move on to the portion of the video where I basically reflect on my time after being back on YouTube for about a year. Going through this reading slump and reading the books I've been reading this year have really made me think about the way I consume book content, what we kind of deal with as booktubers, how we compare ourselves to one another, and the overall pressures that come with being on like a book social media space. I'd like to preface this portion of the video by saying these are my opinions and my experiences. It is not meant to attack or harm anybody in any way. If any part of what I say offends you or bothers you in any way, we can have a discussion about it in the comments. Just remember to keep it respectful and kind. Don't go attacking anybody else. This is meant to open up a kind and thoughtful and respectful discussion. For me, at least, again, this is just for me and my experiences, it has been an interesting ride. It's been an interesting time. While I really love doing videos, I love editing, I love scripting videos, I love talking about books and vlogging, I feel my relationship with reading has changed now being on Bookstagram and BookTube. What I mean by that is, I think before I started these things, before I had Goodreads even, I wasn't comparing myself to other people and how many books I read. Before BookTube, I didn't even really set reading goals for a year. I just kind of read when I had time, read for fun. I didn't say like I had to finish a book by this date or do a book for this video. It was more my hobby, and I think it's really changed now that I do BookTube. I definitely feel that pressure, and I think that's the main thing I want to talk to you guys about today and see if any of you guys can relate to this, because I definitely now feel the pressure to create content and read more. And I think that's what contributed to the reading slump I've been going through the past month, because I just am like, well, I finished House in the Cerulean Sea. It took me like a week and a half. I should really get on, more books now. And I think I forced myself to read, like I said, 4 books. in between that time, and none of them really worked out for me because I just didn't want to be reading. And I think that's the hard part about BookTube is like, I think for us booktubers, and maybe even people who are not booktubers but consume book media, you see people consuming so many books, and maybe you have that thought of like, am I not reading enough? Am I not doing enough? And that kind of almost forces you to like want to read more. So I tried to push myself to be reading constantly, when in reality, after I read a book, I need a few days off before I start another book. I really don't know how people just go book to book to book to book to book. It is crazy, especially during readathons, which I've only done one readathon on my channel. It's hard for me to just go from one book to another and just kind of fly through them. For me personally, I just can't do it. I really want to sit in a book and think about it and reflect on it. I just don't want to go book to book to book for the sake of numbers. But being on BookTube, that's hard. It's like, I think, at least again for me, compared to other booktubers, I do not read that many books. I read maybe 2 to 3 books a month on a good month, one if I'm busy, and like in the past month, I haven't even finished a new book because I'm reading City of Brass again. So like I said, I want to just open up that discussion about like, what does it mean to be a booktuber? How does your relationship with reading change being on BookTube and book social media? Comparing yourself with others, feeling pressure to read certain books, a certain number of books, whatever it may be. Because after being on BookTube again, this is such a wonderful community. You guys who support the channel, the people who I watch, the comments I leave on other people's videos, everyone is so kind and lovely. We keep it very respectful. Of course, there are some people that are not like that, you know, that's with every community. But I think it can be hard as being part of the book community when you see other people reading a certain number of books, you see people reading a certain book and you're like, oh, I feel like I should read that, but I don't really want to. It's not really my genre. Fourth wing. And yeah, it's just something I've been thinking about because like, after I deleted my Goodreads, I just deleted the app off my phone, and then I deleted Instagram for a week, and I just felt better about like things. Like I didn't feel like I had to read a book by any date. I didn't feel like I had to track my reading and share with everyone what I was reading. So I would just keep that in mind for you, my viewers. Like, just think about how you're reading and like who are you reading, or like make sure you're reading for yourself. I think reading at the end of the day, it should be for you. It should be for a hobby. It's what we all love. We all fell in love with reading for a reason. And I really just want to keep that alive because even when I went into Barnes & Noble a few weeks ago, I decided not to go on Goodreads before, or like check the Goodreads ratings of the books I bought. I wanted to kind of capture some of that curiosity I had when I was younger, before I had BookTube, before I had Goodreads, Instagram, etc. Of just going into a bookstore and finding something that I was really excited about without checking the Goodreads reviews. So that being said, like I said, I'm having a good time on BookTube. It's fun. It's definitely changed my relationship with reading, and I think my relationship with reading is going to continue to change and grow over time. But I will still try to create great videos for you guys, and I really appreciate your support. Alright, so now that I'm off my soapbox of opinions about BookTube, let's do a mini book haul of the books I've collected over the past few months. I definitely failed all the book buying bans I was supposed to be on, and I have 5 books to show you guys. The first book I got on my birthday was Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. This is kind of his, I don't want to say second book in the series, but it's set in like a similar universe to that of The House in the Cerulean Sea. I'm really excited to read this one. It's definitely a bit of a tearjerker, I've heard. And I also heard a character from The House in the Cerulean Sea makes an appearance in this one, so I'm very excited to get to this. This next book I am absolutely terrified to read. I started reading it, I think, at the end of July, and I put it down because I was like, nope, not emotionally ready for that yet. That's The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I feel like a little bit of a fraud because I have Babel on my bookshelf, I want to read Yellowface, and I want to read The Poppy War, and I still have not read a single book by R.F. Kuang. I think she's really popular right now. I believe she's like a PhD student in East Asian Studies, which is really cool. That's kind of like right up my alley. So I really want to read this. I believe this is an East Asian historical fantasy book that is a trilogy, and I've heard this is kind of like soul-crushing, world-shifting, amazing, and I'm really excited but nervous to read this. So those were the 2 books I got for my birthday that I kind of hauled and kept for myself. This next book is called Foundryside. I bought this a few weeks ago because this has been on my radar for a little bit now. This is like a sci-fi fantasy heist-y novel. I would say this is like has a similar trope to that of Six of Crows, where it's like an unlikely group of people come together to accomplish a mission. Again, I started reading this, I read a few chapters in and wasn't quite clicking with it yet, but I got this mainly because I've heard about it. I got it from the library like 3 separate times, and I'm like, okay, Alessandro, if you want it that badly, you want to read it eventually, just get it, hold on to it so you don't keep getting it from the library. I'm really excited to read this. I think this will be a fall read for sure. I will let you guys know my thoughts about it later on. The next book I got was kind of just like a random buy because I just wanted to have this copy on my bookshelf, and that is Jade City by Fonda Lee. You guys know, if you've been on my channel this year, I really enjoyed the Greenbone Saga. I have read the entire trilogy already, which is Jade City, Jade War, and Jade Legacy. Jade City, I think, is my favorite book out of the trilogy. I listened to a podcast with Fondalie in it the other day, and she kind of described the way like her readers like each certain book out of the trilogy. I definitely fell into the camp of loving Jade City and the things that go down in Jade City the most. This was definitely one of my favorite fantasy series that has really gotten me into the adult fantasy genre, and I just wanted a copy for my bookshelf. It is possible that I will do a reread of the entire Greenbone saga one day, but I definitely wanted to have Jade City at least on my shelf. This next book is the last book I have for you guys, and honestly, this is the book I know the least about. I've heard the least about this, but TJ Klune blurbs it on the back, so I kind of immediately bought it after reading the synopsis as well. This is A Marvelous Light by Freya Marsk. This is like a queer mystery book with some like magic aspects to it. It is kind of like a murder mystery with like some secret magic society, I believe. I'm really excited to read this because I know very little about it. I kind of want to go in blind. I think queer mysteries are super cool and like we don't have enough of those, so I'm definitely really excited to read this. But there you guys have it. That is the book haul, and with that, the conclusion of this video. Thank you guys so much for checking out the video. As always, I really appreciate your support. If anything in the video resonated with you, especially in the middle part where I talked about BookTube and like the pressures of reading and changing your relationship with reading, please feel free to leave a comment down below. I'm really interested to hear what you guys have to say, especially if you are fellow booktubers. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and check out my Instagram in the link down below. I am back on Instagram now after my brief hiatus, so definitely check me out there. My name is Alessandro, and thank you guys again for checking out the video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!